Hey, folks, and welcome back into the Hook 'em Hoops podcast. Very excited to be joined, as always, by Jason Kinander. My name's Tommy Yarrish, and for the first time ever here on Hook 'em Hoops, we got a very special guest. We're very happy to welcome in a Dallas First Baptist Academy legend. He went on to play a year at Brookhaven College, where he was an academic All-American. Then he spent some time at Southwestern, became a University of Texas basketball walk-on for Shaka Smart, and now he's got one of the best eyes for talent in the basketball industry and helps out as a national recruiting analyst and scout for 24/7 Sports. It's the great Brandon Jenkins. Brandon, thanks for being here, my guy. How you doing?
And I appreciate you having me. That was a hell of an introduction.
I told Jason before the show, I was like, hey, I'm doing this intro and you're not stopping me. I wrote it and I was like, yeah, this is a banger. It's going to make him laugh. So back off, buddy.
Yeah, you got it all down you hit it all down the line. That's usually a longer story to tell.
Man, I
do
went
the way
back.
you do.
I went back to your prep hoops days. Shout out to our guy Geoffrey Day and the crew over there for setting up your profile, and I got most of it off of that. But nonetheless, Brandon, really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us. We're going to talk some Texas recruiting today, specifically in that 2024 class. The Longhorns now, according to 24/7 Sports, with just 3 commits, have the number 4 class in the country. And Brandon, a big reason for that is Tre Johnson, the 5-star prospect. He's the number 4 overall prospect in the country, was the number 1 prospect in Texas. Now he's playing at Link Academy in Missouri. Brandon, this is a guy that you've seen a couple of times now. What is it about Tre Johnson that makes him that caliber of player and makes him the cornerstone of Rodney Terry's first class?
Absolutely. I think the first and foremost thing is he could really shoot the ball. I think in this climate of basketball, when you look at different levels, whether it be the NBA, college, or high school, you really have to be able to shoot the ball to be effective and keep a defense honest. And that's his calling card at this point. I know he's known as a shot maker and a scorer, but he could really shoot the basketball. He has a beautiful jump shot. His work ethic is incredibly high, and he's just somebody who can really stretch a defense, and that's always valuable within an offense. Now, outside of his ability to shoot, he can score the basketball on 3 levels. He has a great mid-post game. He can get to the spots in the mid-range. He can even knock down tough jumpers. It's one of the things that he really specializes in. And like I said, he's a workhorse, man. Texas will only probably get him for about a year. But in that year, he'll probably give you a great glimpse of, all that is in his arsenal, because he's one who works hard, and he wants to take the challenge of being the primary option on offense. So, he's a big time player, a former number 1 player in the class, and somebody that Rodney Terry was very excited to get.
You talk about the scouting report, and first of all, thank you very much for joining us today, Brandon. Super cool talking some recruiting and the Longhorns class of 24. So I'm excited to hear your answer about this. You talked about the profile with Tre Johnson, very enticing skill set. Who are some recent college players who you would compare his style of play to?
The one that always stood out to me, and I know it's probably not recent, but it's about 7 years ago, but you can watch this dude play in the league, is I like the Devin Booker comp. And there's multiple reasons why I like it. One of the main reasons is because of that dog mentality. With Devin Booker, don't let the looks fool you. He's one who talks a lot of trash. He has a lot of dog in him, and he never shies away from the big moment. He wants the ball in his hands, especially when pressure arises the most. Tre Johnson is one of those type of dudes, and what they have in common is they also shoot the basketball at a very high level. Now, unlike Devin Booker, Tre chose a school where he will have to be the primary option on offense. Devin Booker back then was in that platoon system where he didn't get a lot of shine, but he also got enough love to be a lottery pick. And I think Tre Johnson projects in the same light. And then, the number one, or another way that they are very similar is they don't create space tremendously well. They tend to use footwork just to get their shots off. So it's one of those interesting things where it's a lot of fundamentally sound increments within their game for them to, thrive as 3-level scorers. And I think, those 3 things are the reason why they're so comparable.
And then, Brandon, you mentioned Tre coming in next year, potentially and more than likely being the number 1 scoring option for Texas. Do you think that is going to be a seamless transition? Obviously, starting off, it's never going to be a seamless transition. It's going to take time to adapt, but that's why you schedule, the easier teams first, so you can kind of warm a guy like that up before you play some tougher competition. But is this a guy that you can see stepping on campus and immediately stepping into that primary scoring role from the day that he gets to Austin?
Yeah, so I think that it's a very contextual answer because one of the things that I've been trying to analyze when I look at his fit at Texas is who's coming back. And it's just in the day of the age of the transfer portal and the day and age of, you just don't know what is in these players' mind if they're ready to be done attending classes and going and making an early entry into the NBA draft. You just never know what you can never project a roster for, the next coming year just with all those variables taking place. So just off his talent and skill level alone, yes, I do think he's ready to make an instant impact, and I do think it can be a positive outlook from day one. But at the same time, it would be good to have somebody like Tyrese Hunter come back in a system. He usually does really well playing alongside a dynamic point guard, and I think those two can complement each other well. But at the same time, he shoots the ball at a high level. He can score the basketball. Now, sometimes his shot selection can be a little iffy, and it can play a part into his efficiency. But for the most part, he's talented enough to make a positive impact from day one. But I do think that answer is very contextual at the same time.
I feel like I have to ask because of what happened last year with Ron Holland and AJ Johnson. Obviously, the big surprise with the Tre Johnson decision wasn't that he just committed, but he signed. Is there any reason for you or for Longhorn fans to be worried that Tre Johnson might not make it on campus? Or do you think that this is a firm commitment? We're going to see him in burnt orange next year?
In my opinion, I think it's a firm commitment, but I can understand why Longhorn fans and even the Longhorn staff may have a little bit of PTSD just from the Ron Holland situation. But at the same time, when I interviewed Tre in October when he cut his list down to Baylor and Texas, he told me straightforward that the G League is not a part of my final three. I'm choosing between Baylor and Texas, and he chose Texas. And, from my conversation with him, that's where he's going to school next year. Now, with that being said, the G League is going to make a push. The Ignite has been beneficial. Obviously, Ron Holland is thriving in there. You got guys like Tyler Smith, Modest Buzelis thriving in there. So it's going to be hard for Tre not to take a look at it. But as far as I know, I think it's a firm commitment to Texas.
And then, Brandon, one final thing here about Tre before we move on to the rest of the 24 class. The one knock on him, or the one thing that, he can probably develop and be better, is not really good being the point guard in the offense. Kind of struggles at times to bring the ball to the floor and lead the offense, more of the true shooting guard, where he's the guy who you want to take the shots. And sometimes, if he is in that point guard situation, he tries to do too much, and that just leads to bad things efficiency wise. So is that something that you think is occurring now just because he's still at the high school level, or is that something you are, maybe a little bit concerned could transfer into college? You mentioned having Tyrese Hunter there to complement him. If he's not there, is Tre going to be asked to do too much, do you think?
No, because I think the staff knows that it's in their best interest to make sure that this works. Rodney Terry does not have a history of having a previous one and done caliber player. And so Tre Johnson is going to be the first look at it, and Rodney Terry is going to do everything to make this look right. And so I believe that he's not going to be asked to do too much, but I think he's going to be asked to strictly play to his strengths. And I think the coaching staff will do a great job of that. As far as him being more of a combo guard, shifting to the point guard role, I think it's just on Tre to, value what he specializes in. I think, us at 24/7, we might not agree on everything, but the one thing that we do agree with is that he is a true shooting guard, and he needs to focus on, not only scoring, but also taking the right shots just to make himself look great in the best light. He does have a Mamba mentality, just factoring in his work ethic, and he does want the bright lights, and he will take tough shots whenever he feels the need to. So, just him balancing out his efforts in an efficient fashion, I think that can make him look good, and also having the players around him. And it's just on the Texas staff to recruit well in the portal and also retain some of their talent just to make sure that, they're taking care of business, just to make sure that Tre Johnson is in the best light when it comes time for him to enter the NBA draft.
Longhorns have two other signees in the class of 24, Nick Cody and Cam Scott. I want to ask about Cam Scott first. Number 7 shooting guard, ranked by 24/7 Sports, in the class of 2024, number 1 player in the state of South Carolina. What are the Longhorns getting in Scott? He was for quite a long time the only commitment in the class of 24. Now he is signed, so I fully expect to see him on campus. What are the Longhorns going to get?
For sure. Well, Cam was a former 5-star. I remember when that class's rankings first came out. He was ranked within the, top 15, top 20 range. So he's always been a notable shooting guard in the class. And the first word that kind of strikes out to me outside of the basketball court is probably his loyalty. I think he was a favorite to commit when Chris Beard was on staff. And so, now that the Longhorns were able to retain that relationship, build upon it, and get him locked in, I think that's big time. And so now when we focus on the hardwood, we're looking at a guy with a supreme talent level. He really had a great coming out party in the Pangos All-American camp in June, I believe. He was just one of the more talented prospects, can get his offense going on all three levels. And really did a good job scoring off the bounce. He's just one who screams with talent, but it's going to be on the coaching staff to develop him and make sure that he can play alongside a guy like Tre Johnson, who does score off high volume. But he brings a lot of things to the table. He brings great positional size. He's a good athlete. He can put the ball on the floor. It's just all on him on channeling his efforts consistently, just to make sure that his game translates seamlessly to the college level and to the SEC.
And then lastly, Nick Cody, the bigger guy in this class, this forward. What do you like about his game, and what do you see him projecting as for the Longhorns here in the near future?
Absolutely. So about this time last year, Nick Cody didn't have a high major offer. He was a guy who, dripped with long-term tools and potential. And now we look up and he's a top 50 player in the country and somebody that Rodney Terry was very adamant about, locking in this class, and rightfully so. And I mean, when you look at the programs recruiting him, you see Houston, you see Auburn, you see Miami, like successful programs that really wanted this dude on, and for great reason. Like I said, he screams with long-term tools. He's 6'9", lengthy frame, long arms. But the one thing about upside guys, usually when you talk about an upside guy, usually they don't scream with production. And most of the time is because they don't know how to play hard. And Nick Cody isn't wired that way. I mean, he's the son of a former NFL player, Nakia Cody. And he's just wired to play with the high motor, make things happen. He utilizes his length. He gets deflections. And then also he shows a great skill level. He's ambidextrous around the rim, and he has a good feel for the game and can even put the ball on the floor himself. So with all that being said, he does come in bringing a great foundation of tools to the table, but it may take some time. I see him being in the rotation from year one, but adjusting to the physicality of the SEC, learning how to play against physical competition. He's coming from Newman Smith. That's not really a talented high school. So it'll be a big transition from him from day one in June once he arrives on campus. So just making those moves, making sure that he lives in the weight room and continuing to skill up will give him a better chance to make an earlier impact. But this could be some time, and we could see him not crack the starting lineup till sophomore year, or we could see him, capitalize on that motor and improve at a rapid rate and, be a feature player from year one. It's just a long-term get that the Longhorns are excited about.
One last question.
Go ahead.
One last question on the 24 class. Rodney Terry, the rumor is the Longhorns want a 4-man class. They have 3 signees, not a whole lot of uncommitted guys left. Do you think that there's anyone that top 75, top 100 that Texas might be looking at? Do you think that, how is this where Texas's class is going to finish? Or do you think that there's more moves for the Longhorns to make with the early signing period just now opening?
As far as I know, with my talks with the staff, I believe that this class is locked in. You have a top 5 recruiting class, which really looks good on the resume. And you locked in the best player in the state and the best shooting guard in the country. So I think that they're just going to look at this class, see what talent they can retain, see who leaves. And then obviously we know this staff has a history of going to the portal, and they've been successful in doing so. So, they're probably going to add the portal flavor within. But I think this class is finished, and it's shaping up to look like a good one and a promising one long term.
Yeah, I think Rodney Terry will take a top 5 class every single day out of the week. Speaking of Rodney Terry, it's his first full season now as head coach. Before that, Rodney Terry, I think, has been undervalued a little bit as a recruiter. He's been huge for Texas during his assistant coaching days and landing these top targets, and was really good recruiting at other stops like UTEP as well. What do you think, Brandon, is going to be the catalyst for Terry to finally turn the page? So many people were questioning and still question whether or not he's a guy who's the right fit for Texas, for a place like Texas. What's going to have to be Rodney Terry's proving point to tell the fan base, I'm the guy and I'm not going anywhere?
Well, building off of last year, for starters, just making sure that you can maintain the consistency. I know the narrative in the summer was those were Chris Beard's guys, and he had to, set the record straight. I believe he did it on the Field of 68, on the Field of 68 show. But it's building off of next year, and then also showing that you can develop professionals. This day and age in recruiting, all these kids want to go to the league. So You know, you have a McDonald's All-American and Dylan Mitchell, who in his mind, I know he didn't expect to come back for a second year, but here he is. And, you know, him building off of games like the game that he had against UConn and maintaining that motor and level of consistency will be big. I think him going to the league and Rodney Terry being able to develop a pro in a way that will be loud. And then obviously you have Tre Johnson committed. This is a projected one and done, and I think he'll be one and done regardless of how his career, you know, shapes up in Austin. So, you know, just how the magnitude of what it is, how productive he is, and how great it looks. Are they going to be winning? Is Tre Johnson going to be thriving? I think all of these things will be loud when you're looking at Rodney Terry and, you know, how the outside world perceives him and how, more importantly, how prospects perceive him, you know, moving forward.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
I want to ask about the class of 25 here. Texas doesn't have any commitments yet, but a lot of schools don't. Still very early in the recruitment of that class. Current high school juniors. Who are some of the top targets that you are aware that the Longhorns are looking at in the class of 25? Just a couple of names that fans should get acclimated with.
Absolutely. Well, I think for starters, it's important to say that Rodney Terry, when he landed Nick Cody and Tre Johnson in 24, he was very adamant about making sure that they keep the best players in Texas at Texas, making sure that they nab those players, keeping those players as Longhorns. I don't know if y'all seen the tweets or anything like that, but he's been pretty loud about it. And so with the class of 2025, I'm expecting the same thing. It's going to be a deep and loaded class for the state of Texas. There's going to be a lot of dudes that we don't know as of now that are probably going to emerge as high major prospects. But for now, I would say the three dudes to focus on is John Clark, a big man out of Klein Kane. You know, his trainer is TJ Ford, so there's a connection over there. But the main thing with him is he's a big man who hasn't really scratched the surface of what he can become, but shows signs of a great skill level, a great feel for the game, and also is very active. He knows the importance of running the rim, step out, stretch the floor. He just does things that are required of a big man and is one of the best big men in the country, if you ask me. Second is Kingston Fleming. He's in San Antonio. He plays for Brennan High School, one of the top teams in 6A within the UIL division. And he's just a pass-first guard. He screams upside. He actually might have the most upside out of any point guard in the national 2025 class. But he's a guy who's, you know, very underdeveloped physically, but he plays for others, very unselfish, can get into the paint, shows a lot of wiggle, needs to work on his jumper. But like I said, that upside is something that you can't pass up on. And he has great pop in his legs. He's an exciting player to watch play. And then somebody even more exciting than him, the third player is a local kid, Hudson Greer. And this is a kid who's originally from the West Coast, so may see UCLA and Arizona, you know, take their swings at him. But this kid is tough. He's loaded with toughness. He has an ever-improving jump shot, and it seems like every setting where our staff watches him play, whether it be USA Basketball, Pangos, EYBL, or for Lake Travis in the Austin area, this kid is going to produce. He's going to rebound. He's going to fight for 50-50 balls. And the most exciting part that I think Longhorn fans would love if he were to commit there is he makes exciting plays above the rim. He's somebody that I could project to go really viral this summer just because he has a past history of dunking on somebody's head. So it's good to have somebody like that. And then outside of Texas, there's one prospect that does stand out to me. And it's Koa Pete. He's from Gilbert, Arizona. I believe he plays basketball at Perry High School. Top 5 player in the country, one of the top power forwards in the class, and his game is just loaded with versatility in that 2025 class. The reason why I mentioned him and he's so key is because Rodney Terry has been adamant about his ability to land some of those guys in the transfer portal that were successful on that Elite Eight run. One of those dudes was Timmy Allen. And Timmy Allen was a member of the Compton Magic, and that's who Koa Pete has been playing for the last 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And so, Rodney Terry has shown relationships there. Koa Pete is tight with Timmy Allen. They kind of have the same game, even though Koa probably screams with more upside. And so that's just another player to watch out for and watch out to see if Terry's relationship will be able to land, another top 5 player in the country, given so.
I want to touch some more on Koa because I know that's really the biggest target, I think is fair to say, in that 25 class. Those 3 Texas guys would be fantastic additions. I'm a big fan of John Clark's as well. I've seen him play a bunch with TJ, and then Kingston Flemings and Hudson Greer haven't seen as much of. But as far as Koa, can you touch a little bit more on his game and why he would be a good fit in Rodney Terry's system? Know your player comp for him was PJ Washington with the Hornets, but is that another guy who could be, for lack of a better term, the Tre Johnson of the 2025 class, where he comes in, has an immediate impact, and is a one and done type of player?
For sure. I would say, and it's wild to say this because I think like Tre is a great talent. But in terms of the college basketball landscape, Koa Pete is like a safe bet to produce from day one. I know you mentioned player comps is crazy. When I first watched him play, I believe he was an 8th grader, and I thought he was projected to be a point guard. My first comp for him was Cade Cunningham. I mean, anything that revolves a versatile player who could rebound, pass, and dribble, that's Koa Pete. But the thing that stands out with him, and the reason why it transferred to PJ Washington, is yes, he can dribble the ball, he can facilitate, he can rebound, but he can really defend. He's a versatile defender. Whether it's checking like point guards all the way down to the 5-man level, he's physical, he can slide his feet, and he wants to guard. He makes a lot of defensive plays. He doesn't get credit for his length and his timing defensively, but they're all big assets to him being the versatile player that he is and one of the more versatile players in the high school game. And so Rodney Terry has a history of coaching players like him. And I think it would be a terrific fit, and it would be more of a safer bet, probably one of the more safer bets out of any prospect who can commit this day and age in the high school game when you're looking at a guy like Koa Pete.
So the last question that I have, really just circling back to the 24 class for a second. Rodney Terry and the Longhorns have talked about how they don't really want to have to do this whole rebuild, tear down on the roster every year. Fortunately, they don't really have a choice. That's just college basketball in 2023. But do you think that with Cam Scott and Nick Cody, those are 2 guys who are rated in the top 50, but they're not 5-star recruits. Do you think part of what drew the Longhorns to them is the likelihood of them staying more than 1 year, becoming like foundational pieces for the program?
For sure, and it will be interesting. I wish I can answer your question, but it will be interesting to see if they can carry it out. The Longhorns have a great staff. I mean, Frank Haith has a history of success. Rodney Terry has a history of success. Brandon Chappelle is an up-and-comer who I think will be one of the best recruiters in the game long-term. Steve McClain is on staff. He brings a lot of experience. So, I know that bringing in those dudes, it was with that goal, but we'll see if they can take on that challenge. I know Texas is not known for being a program that's known for player development just because of what's happened in the history, a lot of roster rebuild and whatnot, a lot of the staff going to the portal just to make sure that the teams can compete in a high-level conference like the Big 12 and next year the SEC. But this is a challenge for them to build upon. I mean, you bring in 2 talented dudes, 2 separate positions, and it'll be interesting to see. And I think it will be good for those 2 to be in the rotation and throw them into the fire and see how they develop. I think it serves well. I know we mentioned before how we talked about Tre Johnson and his success will be loud, but developing a pro for 2 to 3 years also is loud as well. We've seen Villanova do it. We've seen Houston do it. Marcus Sasser is having success right now. So, I mean, I think they are taking on that challenge, and I think that they have all the tools needed to be successful within that round. So, yeah.
Brendan, I've got another one for you, going not back way further, but to the 23 class. Devon Pryor kind of comes in as a late addition. He reclassifies and joins the team immediately for this season. I think the plan was to redshirt him. That didn't really happen, and now he's getting some minutes here and there. what was appealing to the staff about Devon Pryor, and do you have a feel for how they'd like to use him going forward? Because Rodney Terry has been adamant the last couple of weeks about, hey, this is a guy who we're going to need to get minutes so that when we need him, he's ready to go.
Absolutely. For this year, I would just see, initially they loved his athleticism, and that still plays a part. He is a freaky athlete. He can do a lot of things just with his athleticism alone. Obviously, he brings great size, length, and great pop in his legs. So he's a great functional athlete. And so for him to stay in that rotation and build off of what the impressions that he's already made on the staff, it's on him to, take pride in getting stops and also making open shots. Everything your freshman year, when you're looked upon as a dude who was at first going to redshirt, it's about seizing opportunities. So, making open shots, getting key stops, getting 50-50 balls, and making those loud plays that are key to, drumming up wins for the Longhorns. I think that's where his niche is going to be in his freshman year. And then behind the scenes, just working on your game. I think it's important to have a strong work ethic. Obviously, he's in Austin, Texas. He's a freshman. There's a lot of distractions there, but right now, like focusing in and locking in on having a strong work ethic will be key for Devon Pryor's development. And, I'm pretty sure he's showing great signs of that. That's why he's getting early minutes at this point and, making a name for himself early. So it's just him building off that foundation of skills and tools that he has just to make himself hopefully more of a key player by the time next year rolls around.
Anything else, Tommy?
Brendan, you've been around this program literally. You were a walk-on during the Shaka Smart days. I guess my final question for you would be, when you look at the program then, you were kind of there towards I guess you could call it the back end of Shaka's reign. And now you see Rodney Terry come through after the very brief Chris Beard period. How would you describe the trajectory of this team? Is this a team that, they may not make it to the Elite Eight this year, but they could get those kinds of tournament appearances going forward? Rodney Terry just kind of needs to get this engine revving up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's crazy. I was talking with a friend, outside the industry, and I was raving about Texas just because there is a chance that Tyrese can come back and there is a chance that Caden Shedrick can come back, right? Now, we don't know that for sure, but just with what they have to work with and the potential within the program, yeah, I think things are looking promising. I would just challenge the fans or people around the program, anybody that's tied in, just to, give Rodney Terry his time and let him work. He's already shown success. He's brought in Tre Johnson. He's brought in Nick Cody. Those are two of the top dudes within the state. So obviously he's carrying out his plans of keeping, the best talent as a Longhorn and having them wear burnt orange. He brings in an out-of-state dude like Cam Scott. So I just say let's let this dude work. When the pressure was on him, he brought together a roster, primarily of transfers and newcomers that is going to be comparable and that's going to have a fighting chance in the Big 12 to make some noise. So I would just say let him work. I think this roster is promising. Obviously, with the recruits that he have, bring the recruits that he's bringing in for next year, that blend of potential returners with those guys can tend to be like a top 10 preseason team in the country once 2024 rolls around. So I think the future looks bright. I just think it's on everybody around the program to, just let the staff work and see what they can do this year and see if they can build upon it. It's all about year-to-year growth, and I think they have a great chance of, achieving those goals.
All right, Brandon. Well, that's all that we got for you. So thank you so much again for taking some time to join us. And thank you for watching us here on the Hook'em Hoops podcast. Really appreciate you coming out and joining us. Be sure to stick around the YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcast. We're going to have some more great guests joining us later on this season, and hope that Brandon is nice enough to come back and join us again. We had a fantastic time talking to him and hope that you all had a great time listening to him as well. So for Brandon Jenkins and my co-host Jason Kinander, my name is Tommy Yarrish. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.